Pleasure now to be joined by the head coach of the Acadia Axemen, who have a host of talented players available in the draft coming up on May 4th, of course, for you. And as always, it's great to catch up with Jeff Cummins, who I always enjoy being able to see it. East-West is basically the only time that we seem to cross paths, Coach Cummins, but great to be able to be here with you, and I hope that you're doing well out there on the East Coast.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks, Marshall. It's been obviously an interesting year, and East West is a lot of fun for us. And I feel really bad for our kids that come into university, and a lot of them are looking forward to that game. So it's funny you mentioned it. It would be coming up here this next week or so, and it's disappointing I don't get to see those guys play and get to see all my friends and you included in that friend group there, buddy. And it's frustrating and tough, and yeah, we just had actually some new restrictions put in on us here in Nova Scotia today. Now, not anything like unfortunately what you guys are dealing with in Ontario, but yeah, it's tough. Everybody's struggling through, but yeah, great to see you. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about that. And it's amazing because the guys that you have going into the draft class this year, we didn't get to see them at the East West Bowl last year, which makes it very difficult. But you bring up a great point about this year not happening either, which makes, even if we get back to normalcy, we get back on the field, we play this fall, we're still going to go into the draft of next year and not be able to see these guys and pick them apart at the East West Bowl and be able to see them all competing against each other, which I love that event so much, Jeff, because you get to see last time we were out there, one of the last times, Marc-Antoine Ducroix from the University of Montreal is out there running around at corner, and he's going up against some of the best receivers from UBC or Sask or, Laurier, and you get to see these guys head to head. And I think sometimes I'm guilty of overanalyzing that stuff, but there are certain moments that really do jump out to you at the East West
Sure.
Bowl that you get to enjoy as a football fan, analyst, coach. I'm sure you guys have those moments too, where you're in practice and you see two of the very best in the country going head to head. You go, man, this is a great setup to be able to see these one-on-one in a prime setting.
Absolutely. And you're referring to everything that happens on the field. For me, it's fun to watch those guys off the field. It's like recruiting. You get a chance. If I'm a CFL guy, I get to kind of watch those guys every day, how they walk onto the field, how they walk off the field, what are they doing at the meal hall, what are they doing throughout the week, how are they viewed by their teammates, their opponents, what kind of people are they. Sometimes we as coaches, when we recruit kids, we want to talk to the guy that they're not pointing us at. They're pointing us to their head coach. Well, let's talk to their opponents. Let's talk to the opposing coach. What does he say about that kid, and does he have good things to say about him, just like what you see? And it gives me an opportunity. Marc-Antoine Ducroix is a perfect example of a kid that, we hadn't got a chance to see play. And then I get a chance to see him run around and do some stuff out there at the East West game. You're like, man, this guy's phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's every good as they said. And he was a great kid, walks into his meeting room with, a notepad and a pen, and he's ready to go and he wants to learn. And, we're not doing anything earth shattering there on defense. So it wasn't like he was coming in to learn a brand new scheme or something. However, he was ready to go. And you get a chance to see some of that stuff, and not just from, that guy. It's the guy you don't know much about and, plays out at Regina and you've never heard of him or seen him. He comes out there on the field and you're like, holy cow, this guy is something. And then he blows up the next year and, he's an all-Canadian. So it happens all the time. And yeah, I miss all those things for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that we get back to all that. Before I move on to some of your players at Acadia that I do want to ask you about, because you guys are the leaders in the AUS heading into this draft in terms of prospects and talent and testing at the virtual combine, all the rest. But let's go back, because I actually don't know the answer to this question, which is my favorite questions to ask. How did you break into the CFL? Because I dove through the 93, 94 CFL draft, and I did not see Jeff Cummins listed. And so coming out of Oregon, what was your origin story for people that don't know?
Projected to go late, and and it just didn't happen. And I got picked up right after the draft was over, and had 3 or 4 teams that were interested in signing me right away. And I chose to come home to Los Angeles, and it seemed like the best fit for me. They had only drafted 1 defensive lineman. It looked like it was going to be a great situation. And to be honest with you, I mean, looking back on it now, however many 20, almost 30 years ago now, it was a good situation. It was a good fit. And, maybe could have made the team, maybe not. I mean, I was a young, pass rusher, and I could run and I could pass rush and I could do all those things, more of a pass rush kind of specialist, more so at that point. Didn't understand how to play the run as well. And as I got a little bit older and playing the CFL, I played a lot easier. But got cut from the Rams after all of our exhibition games. Signed with, oh gosh, who was next? Philadelphia, then signed with Cleveland, had workouts with 5 or 6 different NFL teams in '93, and was with the Browns, and that's where I met Coach Belichick was my head coach, and Coach Saban was our D coordinator, and it was a good experience. Unfortunately for me, I got cut again in '94, and then midway through that season, or midway through the CFL season, right after I got cut in the NFL. My agent said, "Hey, listen, we can go through this again. I think you might get picked up, but there's some CFL teams that are interested in you." And it just so happened to be Las Vegas, which was the team that was, had my rights and, not too far from home. And I had a couple good buddies in Nevada at UNLV, actually going to school. And I went and lived with them for half a season and lived in Vegas for '94 season.
Amazing. Yeah. So that's how you end up getting into the Canadian Football League, which is that classic kind of quintessential American journey, because most of the guys that you see come up, they're not, hey, I'm, Rocket Ismail and I have an opportunity to go high in the draft like everyone's talking about this week, and I just end up in the CFL. It's, I bounce from place to place to place to place. I'm interested in the psychology of you bouncing around and going through that journey and then getting the call from your agent about Las Vegas. What was your first reaction to that? Did you have any exposure to the CFL at that point?
Yeah, I did. I fortunately I did. A guy that's quite a bit older than you and I both, but was a family friend. In fact, he was referred to always as Uncle Gene. Gene Gaines was a phenomenal Hall of Fame defensive back in the CFL in Winnipeg and all over, and as a coach as well in the CFL. His family all lived around us, and his nephew was one of my best friends growing up, was like a younger brother to me, my brother's best friend. And anyways, his uncle, Gene, was a CFL guy and coached and played in forever, came down with the LA Express. I'm dating myself here. This is probably before you were born. In 1984, came down there with the LA Express with, oh gosh, now I lost his name, head coach from Edmonton forever and a day, and his son coaches now, Hugh Campbell.
Yes. Yeah.
So he went with Hugh Campbell down to the LA Express. So I was aware of the CFL and knew about it. Had a few friends that had kind of moved on and played, and so I was a little bit aware of the CFL. Obviously, didn't pay as much attention to it because my focus was on the NFL at the time, and thought that's where I'd be. When it didn't work out, the opportunity arose and went from there. But it was tough. I mean, from a mental standpoint, and from a try to stick with it. I mean, COVID has been tough. I think at 23 years old, being cut for the first time in my life ever was difficult. I'd never been cut from anything. So that sounds very arrogant, and I don't mean it that way. It was the first time I had faced disappointment like that. And it caused me to kind of look at what I was doing and where I was going and what was happening. And then to have, to have the misfortune of being cut another 3 times in the course of a calendar year was tough. And it kind of gets you to reevaluate what you're doing and what's going on and where you want to be. And if this is really what you want to do. And you battle and you take, small jobs doing little things. I substitute taught for a little bit and did a couple little things, but it was difficult. But anyways, it ended up working out. And it's however many years later, I'm in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. So
yeah, absolutely. And been there since '04, I believe is the official.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was here in '01 as an assistant coach. So
Yeah.
Sonny Wolf hired me as an assistant. So I was a part-time assistant in '01 and '02. And at that time I got married in '01. I'll make this quick, geez. '01, I got married.
Hey, it's a podcast. We're not on radio, Jeff. Relax.
Fair
Take
enough.
your time. Stretch your
Fair
legs.
enough.
We're good.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So in '01, I got married in April. Long story in between there too, because I actually signed with the XFL right before that. So I finished the 2000 season in Hamilton, asked for my release, got released, went to the XFL. So we finished in November 20th, we lost in the semifinal or the East final. And then, then went to ask for my release and then signed with an XFL team just after Christmas, actually in Vegas when I was there. And I signed with the LA Express or LA, gosh, what was the name of their team? I can't even remember. quickly, I'll tell you, because I was only there for about 8 or 9 days in training camp. My roommate was Bruce Beaton, who's actually an Acadia guy who actually lives here in Wolfville in Nova Scotia,
Crazy.
just 10 minutes from me here. And I see him, every couple of months, but we were roommates for about 8 or 9 days. And in those 8 or 9 days, I had realized I just I didn't want to do this anymore, and I was going to retire. My wife had left vacation in Las Vegas because I have a brother that lives there. Left to come back up to Nova Scotia, and I said, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this. This is not for me. So I retired, quote unquote. Left, got married in April. This was been in January. Got married in April. In March, took a job with Coach Wolf, or said I would take a job with Coach Wolf. Got married, and then took off in middle of May to play for the Toronto Phantoms Arena League team, and played half a season with the Phantoms. Came back, coached in 01. In 2002, went to Arizona. My son was born in May, so I waited till my son was born. Played half of a season in Arizona with the Arizona Rattlers.
Yep.
Lost in the national championship, or in the championship game. So I had a good run there for half a season. Came back, coached in 02. Back in 03, I went to Georgia, played with the Georgia Force. I left there about halfway through the season as well, or started halfway through the season in Georgia. So I coached all the way through spring ball, and then went in May again, and went to Georgia. And by this time, I was 34 years old. Came home, and I was home for about 2 weeks in July. July. And I was asked if I wanted to be the interim head coach, as they had released Sonny Wolf. And so I took on in 03. I decided, okay, I absolutely am retiring now. I'm going to take over as the head coach, or at least on an interim basis. Played the 03 season, or we had the 03 season, lost in the championship to St. Mary's. And and then 04, they asked me to be the full-time head coach. And so I've been the guy since 04.
Man,
Long story, Marshall.
It's amazing. I love it. Honestly, I love the journey though. Like that's a crazy way to get to that point. And I also love the idea, because there's not a lot of schools that would take somebody who's, you're obviously showing dedication by being there, but the fact that you're leaving and still interested in playing, and that you're not, in that 40 plus range, you're 30, 33, 34, and you're doing both, and you're balancing, and for them to come to you and be like, listen, interim. And of course you're like, oh yeah. And then the very next year you become the head coach. I think that that's such a special journey to be able to get to that point. We will get to more on Acadia coming up in a second, but I want to ask you here, I have two follow-ups on the XFL story, because Jeff, that the XFL is of course in the headlines. And so the first one is, what was the motivation to ask for your release to go to the XFL?
You know what? I had been 3 years with Hamilton. We'd gone to 2 Grey Cups, won, lost the first one, won the second. So 98, 99,
yep.
And then 2000. It was an opportunity, I thought, for a new league. I thought there was an opportunity for me to finish off my career back, close to home, either Las Vegas or Los Angeles or San Francisco. Those were some of the teams I thought I was going to be able to play on. And that's where I was seeing some interest from some different players, or some different coaches and groups. And I had a bit of a connection with all 3 of the coaching staffs there over the course of time. You get bounced around with 3 or 4 NFL teams. And then, by that time I had been on 4 CFL teams. So, I mean, the coaching staff and the tree there kind of was all over the place. And there were some in the XFL, there were some, NFL, CFL, they were all over the place. So anyways, I thought I would be able to play back closer to home and finish off my career that way. And I mean, it seemed like a really good idea. Had I stuck it out, they ended up winning the XFL.
Yeah.
Bruce ended up sticking around and playing, and made some good money out of it. And
you got the bonus. That was the big thing right at the end, was the big bonus. If you,
I wasn't going to get into all that. But yes, absolutely. That was a big part of it, was to do that. And that was an opportunity. But anyways, that seemed like it was going to be, and I'd kind of run my course at Hamilton, the 3 years. I'd been there 3 years, going into my 4th year. I knew that I was kind of at the tail end of what I considered a career. And, and then it was just kind of, all right, well, let's see what's out there. And it was fun to kind of get motivated, but to go in, and I'll be honest with you, to go into training camp, in January, I think it was like January 3rd, we started. And within the first day, we were full gear, full go. And I thought to myself, I just finished playing 21 games, and November 22nd or whatever that last game was, November 22nd, I just finished. So I'd been off for maybe 5.5 weeks, and we were full go. And these
Oh,
guys were, NFL cuts, guys that were on practice rosters, and they were like 22, 23 years old. Here I was, 31 or 32, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I wasn't as hungry. I can look at it now and say it honestly. I was not as hungry then as those guys were at that particular time. It just wasn't, I had other things on my mind. And had I been 23 again and just been cut by the LA Rams, I think I would have played a lot differently. I would have been a lot different. But I had already played at that time. I think I figured it out at one time. I think I'd signed 9 professional contracts by that
yeah.
time. So it was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm done. And I wasn't alone. There was like 5 of us that were all around my age that had been NFL, CFL guys, all on that particular team, and it had nothing to do with the coaches. Coaches were fantastic, nothing to do with them. We all kind of within a few days, and maybe that helped or hurt as well. We all kind of retired within like a day or two of one another. So it was kind
Amazing.
of, I don't know, maybe it was on my mind because they had. So, anyways,
Interesting. But what's going on in your mind through those 8, 9 days when you're in that camp, and you sound like you're realizing periodically, and anybody who's listening to this that's ever had a job that they didn't like or they didn't think they were suited for has gone through this, where you get in, you do the training, whatever it might be, you're stocking shelves overnight at a grocery store, you're working at
yep,
7-Eleven, whatever it might be, and you're in there, and it's like day 1, day 2, okay, this is fine. Day 3, day 4, it starts to wear on you. Day 5, days, okay, I don't know if this is day 7. You're like, I don't know if I can do day 8. You're like, I really don't think like it starts to, there's this progression, right? Of, I don't think this is right for me. And for anybody who's working a medial job somewhere in society, all you have to do is say, yeah, I quit, and you move on to the next thing. But they don't get beat up every day when they go into 7-Eleven or to stock the grocery store shelves through the overnight. So I'm intrigued by the idea of you going in through those 8, 9 days, full pads, full go, younger guys, NFL, CFL cuts, all the rest. And at the time where you're trying to make that decision about what your future is going to be, you're also getting beat around and playing full contact, and it's the XFL, and it's supposed to be brute and bash and all the tougher than the NFL and all the ways they were marketing it. What was happening there for you for those 8, 9 days when you go back to your room at the end of the day?
well, that it's interesting you say that when you go back to your room because so as I said to you, I was rooming with Bruce Beaton at the time, and Bruce had come off of a knee surgery. He had got scoped right after the season was over. So he was rehabbing through those 8 or 9 days and even a little bit further, and good on him. I think he'd had more than a few knee scopes through the course of his career, but that was one of the many that he had. Anyhow, and that's just to kind of give you an idea. So he's kind of seeing it all kind of play out. Um, and Noel Prefontaine is on the team as well. And Noel and I are buddies, and we'd known each other for a few years and played golf together and all that stuff. I mean, we're buddies too. And he's on the team, and every day they could see me kind of just pulling further and further away. And those two were just, come on, man, stick it out. It's going to be fun. Like, we're going to be all right. You'll get through this. It'll be okay. And they're kind of trying to talk me in and pulling me back, and I'm kind of pulling the other direction. And my wife has now left for the Christmas vacation in Vegas, where I was with my brother and my mom and my other brother, and everybody was all kind of there. Now she has flown back to Nova Scotia, and I'm there thinking to myself, okay, what am I doing? Do I really want to? Actually, she flew back to Burlington. We still had a house in Burlington, and she was still working there and or working in Toronto. Anyway, long story there. But she's gone, and I'm thinking to myself, is this what I want to do? And we're getting married at the end of April, and there was a lot of things going through my mind. And to your point, the physicality part of it was one thing. Coming from the CFL and the NFL, when you're in training camp, you're getting paid. We were in the XFL, we didn't get a penny.
Yeah.
So here we are in training camp, and we're going through all this stuff, and we're not getting a dime. Like, we're there, and yeah, they're feeding us and whatnot. But other than that, we're in a hotel, meetings are at a hotel. We're kind of going through this whole thing. And it was just one of those things where I said, man, I'm too old for this. And it's funny because like I said, I was probably 30, I think it was 31, and so at that point I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm too old, and
Yeah.
Now looking back on it, obviously, I had some little bit of injuries and whatnot. I have no cartilage in my left knee. And that was when my left knee was starting to bug me quite a bit. And it started to kind of think, okay, is this what I want to do? And battle through it the next couple of years. But, it was just one of those things where I start to physically starting to break down a little bit. And, I've been playing football, tackle football since I was 7 years old. Right. So, as I said, 7 years old all the way up to now I'm 31. And, there's all kinds of things that play on your mind in there. And it was, I wasn't at my peak, and I wasn't ready to battle like some of those other guys were. So then I was being talked into staying, and I was talking myself into staying, but in the reality, I wanted to go. And tough conversation, but coach was great about it. It was Coach Luganbill, who I actually played for in the, oh gosh, Shrine, no, it wasn't the Shrine game. It was, Japan Bowl, Japan
Okay,
All-Star
yeah.
game. So, but he was great, and we have some mutual friends and mutual people that did coach me. And anyways, long story, but we talked for about a half hour, and he just said, best of luck to you, and I understand. So,
One of the first things that
long
jumped out.
story, Marsh.
No,
Sorry.
no. Again, I love hearing these backstories. But one of the first things that jumped out to me to the ABC broadcast of the 2020 XFL was a Luganbill broadcasting on the sidelines.
Yeah,
Like as
yeah,
soon as that happened, I was like, "Yep,
yeah,
okay, I totally get that." Like that
yeah.
feels like that's a full circle life journey of a relative trying to figure out, okay, what was this about with my dad? Was it the last thing I want to ask you about this XFL experience? And I might have to check back with you, hell, Jeff, if we end up doing this merger thing or whatever this is going to become. I have to ask you more questions. But
Well, I'll get you in touch with Bruce. I'll get you in touch with
yes,
Bruce, and you guys can have that conversation, because he was there the whole season, right? I mean, he
yeah.
won it and was there. Anyway, so I'll let you keep going. Sorry.
But I'm interested in I don't want to say similarities and differences, but what do you see from your time in your 8-9 days and understanding of what you were getting yourself into with the XFL? Because you understood the early stages of what you were looking at, and you were asking people, I'm sure, but what is this league about? And is this the smart move for me to leave Hamilton and move on and do something different? And what am I actually getting myself into? Is there anything that you can compare, contrast otherwise from the early days, the creation, the ethos of that XFL to the one that apparently we're on the edge of getting into bed with here?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was new, right? At that point in time, it was the first time, and it was brand new, and it was Vince McMahon, and it was the WWE, and or WWF even back then. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a big deal, and it was the merging of that entity, for me, was like, this is bigger than life. Like, this wrestling thing is something that just was,
Were you a
you know,
wrestling guy? I get the sense.
no,
Okay, I was
no.
going to say
I mean,
when you
I,
said the
I
Vince McMahon name there, I was like, this sounds like you're a
yeah.
wrestling fan who was enamored with the idea of Vince McMahon running something.
You know what? I won't tell you that I didn't watch it. I mean, I watched it, not regularly. It wasn't a weekly thing where I saw it, but I absolutely knew, some of the bigger characters and all that stuff. And when you're younger, you try to emulate some of those guys. And I had the mullet, but that had nothing to do with the WWF. It was more a Brian Bosworth thing, right? So,
Okay.
all through high school, or the end of high school and into junior college stuff, full mullet, the whole nine, right? So, but it was more of, this is going to be crazy. It's going to be wild. There's going to be tons of people around. This is just going to be so super over the top and exciting that I wanted to be a part of it, right? That was just like, let me get in, let me get in. And I think there was that. I think it was kind of a no holds bar approach with the physicality of the first couple of days of practice. Like, I think they were in it, and it was just grind them up and see who shows up after 8 or 9 days. I mean, we were, 7-on-7, not 7-on-7. We were 9-on-6, and we were inside run like every day, full contact, full every cut in the whole nine. And I was like, holy cow! Like, I'm now finishing, what, four NFL contracts and four CFL contracts and all the rest of that stuff. And we practice with helmets. Like, we don't gear. What is all this? Like, we're full go. I played for Ronnie Lancaster there in Hamilton. And we'd be in shoulder pads for 2 days, and then he'd say, all right, that's enough, helmets. And that's training camp. We were in helmets, so being full gear and going full throttle in practice and all that stuff was just a whole nother level. But I think that's what they were going for, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there was no coin toss. It was, okay, put the ball in, they run out, and somebody goes, and whoever slides in there and grabs the ball, okay, you receive the kick, right? There was no, I don't know if you knew that or not. You looked at me like you weren't sure about that.
No,
Like
yeah, I'm familiar
was the
with
whole
that one. I'm just laughing because I saw the other day that Washington State, to show you how far we've gone in terms of player safety, we've gone from the XFL deciding to have players break their arms and rip their shoulders out by
right.
diving for the ball.
Correct.
At Washington State for their spring game a couple of days ago, they had a long snapper snap off to decide who won the coin toss instead of actually flipping the coin.
I would have been pretty good at that, but yeah, that you're right. I mean, it's come full circle, and I mean, what we teach now with regard to tackling and hitting and contact, and no contact hardly ever at practice and all that stuff. I mean, it's so far removed from where that was, and in that day, and I can even think back even during that 8 or 9 days where I probably got a bit of a concussion,
Yep.
one of those days in there. So it was just there were so many things we wanted, but like I said, the allure of the Vince McMahon exercise and experiment of what it was going to be like. And you watch the first couple games, even though I wasn't playing, I watched the first game or two and saw all the craziness that was going on. And it lasted for a couple of weeks and then it kind of fell apart. But there was obviously some great football players there.
Yeah, no doubt. And there were guys that went on to have great success. And
Absolutely.
it's funny because even the most recent version of it, where you end up having some guys go on that get NFL contracts and make
Yeah.
rosters and otherwise, and the rest of the league looks and they go, well, the Alliance of American Football isn't around, and well, Arena League is folded, and well, the Fall Experimental Football League isn't around, and well, the USF. It's like you start trying to pick it out, and you go, okay, there's going to be some massaging here of the future of football, depending on what happens with these discussions that they are reportedly involved in. With I would have spent more time talking with you about everything U Sports, which we can do anytime if you weren't so damn interesting, Jeff. But I do want to ask you about a couple of your guys here in the draft, because Acadia showed out extremely well during the virtual combine, and for anybody who actually knows what you guys have done in recent years, you've had great success. 2019, making it all the way to the UTEC Bowl. Ran up against a really tough Montreal team that ends up falling to the University of Calgary in the Vanier Cup. But on that team, you had some players that ended up getting taken in the 2020 CFL Draft, and of course now in the 2021 CFL Draft. I want to begin by asking you about Glodin Mullally as a receiver that's coming out for you guys. What is he about? And Matthew Gledhill as well. Those two guys that have been operating for you on offense. What are they about, and what can CFL fans expect to kind of get if their team decides to draft them coming up on May 4th?
Yeah, great kids. I mean, both of them are phenomenal kids, and we've been lucky enough here at Acadia that any of the guys that come through our program are just great people, and then they're great people before they ever get here. But we're lucky enough that the culture that we've created kind of here has been outstanding, and these guys are a part of it. In fact, the 2020 guy, probably the leader of that whole crew, would have been Bailey Feltmate, who was a Ticat draft pick, second round pick, and Bailey was kind of a lead dog with that team in 2019, and he was he set the table for a lot of these guys and guys before him. I mean, there's a number of guys before him that did the same, but Glodin and Maddie and Alex Smith is our third guy there that did the virtual combine as well. Great kids, great students. Glodin is an engineering guy and finishing up his engineering degree at Dalhousie, and after leaving after his certificate, getting his certificate here from Acadia after 3 years, and he's one of the most dynamic kids that I've seen in our conference in the last 3 or 4 years. Great ball catcher, runs very crisp routes, fast, quick, continues to get better. He doesn't know how good he can be because he's only been playing football for about 5.5 years.
Right.
So he went into, and there's a whole story there, and you and I could talk about it later, but 11th grade year in high school, he goes to a football meeting for football, and he's originally from Nigeria. He is thinking it's a soccer. He thinks he's going to a soccer tryout. It's football, right? So, oh yeah, that's football for him. So he goes there, and people are starting to talk about shoulder pads and helmets and stuff. He didn't quite understand it. And anyways, long story, he goes through and teaches himself how to play receiver, teaches himself how to play the game of football, and now we just move forward. Fortunately, he played for me and Coach Samara and Team Canada when we won the World Championships here a few years ago, and was a starter on that squad and was fantastic in that tournament. Has just continued to get better. But I mean, he's a phenomenal talent. Might even be a better person. He's a guy that's going to work like nobody's business, but he can catch the ball. He runs with it. He's a great returner. He's great on specials. Like, he'd have been the best gunner in the league had we let him play gunner the whole year.
Yeah.
Sporadically, we'd throw him in there, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 he's making tackles and making plays. We had 5 DBs go down in a game against Mount Allison late in the year. He played corner the last minute and a half. And had he trusted what he saw, he'd have had a pick at the very end, but he didn't trust. He went late and tried to swipe at it late. And, it's funny. Anyways, long story. He's fantastic. Very special to me. He and I are very close and talk, still to this day. He's no longer even going to school here. He's back in Moncton, taking classes online at Dow. But, we talk probably once a week still. So he's a special talent. I think teams are going to be surprised. Whoever gets him is going to be super, super happy and surprised in what kind of talent he is. The other thing is he's listed at 5'9". He ain't 5'9". He's 5'11". And it's unfortunate that, this, in fact, I was talking with Kyle Walters the other day on the phone, and he said, he's taller than 5'9", isn't he? I said, oh yeah, he's about 5'11". But I said, that's what he was listed at. So people continue to take it as that. And it's unfortunate because, teams haven't got to come out here and measure them themselves, or walk next to him, or see him out at practice, or see him at the East-West game and get a chance to measure. Like, that just hasn't happened. So he got measured in his first year at 17 years old at 5'9", and that's what he's been for the last 3 years. Probably bad on us for not updating his roster status, but
well,
but
he
yeah,
was. So this is the thing that's funny, is that I saw, full transparency, there was a variety of things that I created, all of the combine profiles that we put out at CF Perspective. And then I got a note from someone who said, hey, there's been updates over the weekend. And I said, and I was like, great. It's not like I've spent the last 48 hours pissing off my fiance by being buried in my computer trying to get these out quickly. And so I'm like, if there's more than 5 changes to this data, this information, I have to go back in, re-enter, rechange the graphs, reach all this stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna hurt somebody. And so I end up finding out, well, there's only about 6 or 7 changes. Okay, fine, whatever. And one of them that came back was Gloden got knocked down from 5'11" to 5'9". And then you tweeted at us on CFP and said, hey, he's not 5'9". And I sent you back a note that just said, hey, it's just what I got from the CFL. But it's obvious that the CFL was just going from, they saw 5'9" on the website, and they saw whatever the video was of him doing the reach for his height or whatever it might have been as the initial assessment. And you're right. They went with what was in front of them, presented on the team website, which, like you say, is unfortunate. But I also think that for Gloden, it's great because people who actually do their homework, even although it's, socially distanced and virtual, they're going to realize pretty quickly, and it's not that height makes the player or anything like that, they're going to realize that there's more to be learned there, which is really, Jeff, something that I think is going to be across all of these guys and all of these positional groups, is that you're going to get somebody based on what you think and all the homework you've done. There's going to be a lot of surprises in training camp, you'd have to think, when we get there.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be interesting to see, and humbly I'll say this, because I don't want to pretend like I know, but some of these kids, because of the way COVID has done this with CFL rosters, some of these kids aren't going to get invited because of the sheer numbers, and they're knocking down numbers of who can come to training camp and who can't, all that stuff. Some of these kids won't get invited. Well, I'd hate for a kid not to get invited because they thought he was 5'9", right? I mean, do I think it's going to be that much? But, he's not as big as we thought. He's, maybe put him another year back into school and see. And that's one thing. I mean, hell, I was listed at 270 in the CFL for 6 years. I wasn't 270. My last 3 years, I wish I was 270. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, you just kind of, you don't know. And, they're trying to kind of update those things. But he's, the best thing I can say, I shouldn't say the best thing. One of the great things about Gloden right now is he's in Moncton, and you'll know this name, obviously. He's training with Bailey Feltmate, who's in there. So those two are training together. And their third one is soon to be the all-time leading special teams tackler in CFL, Mike Miller. So the 3 of those guys are training together 5-6 days a week. If there's a guy that he could learn a few things from, it's the crafty vet Mike, right? And so they talk special team stuff. I tell them all the time, hey, listen, don't let him tell you he was a good defensive back, because I don't know about all that stuff. You just figure out how to cover punts and kicks. And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I got you, coach. I got you. So, and he refers to him as Coach Miller because he's so much older than him. So it's funny. It's, comical for me, but he's learning and picking up things. And then there's Bailey, who's just in a whole nother class all on his own.
Yeah, love that. Mike Miller, as I like to call him, Maritime Jesus, because everybody out there seems to fall in love with him as the shining sun of everything that's happening in the CFL out there with the Maritimes. But let's move on here to Matty Gledhill and talk about what he kind of is about and background for people.
Yeah, Matty's an Ottawa kid. Came to us in his first couple of years, was slight. Was a good receiver. Ran some decent routes. Not real thick, not real physical. And I used to give it to him. Boy, we anytime there was a wide receiver screen or a run play to his side or whatever, I'd be giving it to him because he just wasn't physical and didn't want to mix it up and didn't want to. Receivers all can run and catch and do all that. So that's great. They work on all that stuff. In all offenses, and this as well as anybody, if you want to have a good offensive team, your receiver's got to be able to block, man.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to be able to. As much as we run wide receiver screens, we got to have a guy that can block. So his first couple of years, I used to give it to him. He figured it out, and I don't want to take any credit at all. He worked his ass off. He's put himself in a really good position. He's physically really put together right now. So much so that now he's a trainer. So now he trains people in lifting and training. He does stuff within our university. He does stuff at one of the Army Reserve bases here. He had a job in Halifax where he was driving back and forth in the first semester because he's done with school. He's graduated. So if he doesn't get picked up, he's going to come back and play for us in the fall. But he's graduated, done with school at this point. He is now, I like to say, and I say this with all the confidence and adulation I can. He looks like a wide receiver slot back kid from University of Saskatchewan 10 years ago. He's 6'3", clean cut, put together, runs great routes, catches the ball. And the thing with him is he's way faster than people give him credit for. So, there's a game last year against St. Mary's. He caught probably 5 or 6 balls for about 180 yards, a couple of touchdowns, and seam routes, corner routes, stop intermittent stuff. We've now start bringing him back in and out of the box, and there's some stuff that he can add to what we're doing here. Good special teams player as well. Hasn't had the opportunities, but he's good on punt return. He's good on kickoff return. We move him around on some of those things. Not a returner like Glodden is. But he's a phenomenal. And if and when he comes back to us this year, if I don't want to say when, if he comes back, he'll be our featured guy. It won't even be close. So
awesome.
Yeah, he's outstanding, and academic All-Canadian every year he's been here. He's a 4.0, something like that.
Crazy.
He's outstanding.
I gotta admit, Jeff, I'm torn because I want things to be normal, and I want there to be CFL, and I want us to have normal sized training camps and everyone to get their shot. But I don't need a double cohort of 2020 and 21 CFL draft classes going in, a bunch of guys getting cut and giving up football. I kind of love the idea of U Sports football in 2021, assuming everything gets off the ground as well, just being stacked. Just having a ton of talent in every conference on every team that's been CFL recognized. It makes your mind wander a little bit about what the positives unintentionally could be coming out of such a negative situation here over the last while.
Yeah, I think you're definitely going to see teams who have benefited from that particular option and that situation where guys are, in their third year or their fourth year and they're able to come back and continue to play. I think there are definitely teams that are going to, stacked is a great word, look like they're stacked, like they're creating the super team and whatnot. I think for us, and I hate saying it on, anywhere public, we would have been stacked this past fall.
Right.
And, we were at the high end of that cycle there. We didn't, fare as well as I would have liked in that game against Montreal in 19. Had we come back, we would have returned 10 out of 12 offensive starters.
Yeah.
I think if you ask me today, without Gledhill, without one other guy who's not in school right now as well, Alex Smith, actually, without those guys, I hate saying it, but we're 0 for 12 on starters from that 2019 team.
Wow.
So we don't return a single starter coming back from that team. And they've all just graduated. It's not like they left or they don't want to be here. They're all graduated. They were all looking to come back and either play their fourth year or going to come back and play a fifth year. And from Hunter Gennard to Dale Wright to, you can go down the list of names there. they've all kind of moved on, and it's been a tough road for these kids. And I've tried to talk to them about maybe sticking around when there's no guarantees we're playing again this year. So some of these kids have said to me very honestly, Coach, I can't put my life on hold for 2 years
Yeah.
just to come back and play, a semester. I'm done with school. I'm not going to take anything that's going to benefit me. And we're primarily undergraduate school. It's not like we got, 8 or 10 grad schools here and kids can come in and do their masters in X, Y, or Z. They're all moving on. And, a bunch of them have gone on to other schools, and God bless them. And, we're happy for them. We're excited for them, but yeah, we're not going to be that stacked team that you're referring to, which is unfortunate because I think we were ready for that in 2020.
Lots of room for development. That's all that means. You got tons of
Amen.
potential, and I would also say this: you unintentionally did the Sheehan. You did the Queens thing where you ride the wave, you max out, you get close to being in a national championship, you go back down, you recruit everybody, you take 4 years, you developing, you end up back up at the wave. So I know Queens definitely did that when I was living in Kingston growing up a little bit, where it's like every 5 years,
that's
they're
right.
there because they would just hit home runs, because you get to promise kids coming in and recruiting trips, hey, listen, we've got lots of opportunity. You get a lot of the good players when they want opportunity, they turn into great players. But the last one that we have here from you that was in the virtual combine, I saved it for last intentionally because A, it's line play, which I know you love, and B, it was such a happy surprise for me. Alex Smith, I love the way that he tested. I love the build. I love an AUS lineman that pops up on people that they don't know a ton about. Maybe they even, he gets drafted to Winnipeg or BC or Sask or Ottawa, wherever, and fans are going, all right, generic name, Alex Smith. I don't know anything about this guy. He's from the AUS. I haven't watched an Acadia game in a couple of years since they were in the national semifinals. And they just go, well, let's see what he is. And I love the idea of him just sneaking up on people if he gets to a training camp and gets an opportunity. What is he about? Because these numbers that he put up, I was smiling because as I say, I love seeing an AUS lineman jump out and just surprise people that don't expect anything from him.
Well, that you're saying everything you're saying is dead on. Like, he's going to surprise some people. His name affectionately, Alex Smith's name affectionately, is Skinny. He came in as an offensive lineman. He was a hockey player in high school and in football as well. But he came in as an offensive lineman. He was 220 pounds. He has worked to continue to put on weight his entire career. I mean, there was times he was eating 6,000 calories a day to try to put it in. It's funny. One of his girlfriends a couple years ago was a nutritionist, right? So it was interesting. Like, okay, yeah, that would make sense that you're dating a nutritionist trying to figure out how to feed what you're trying to create. He has worked at it. Brilliant academic All-Canadian, taking his MCATs. He's actually been, he's already been accepted at a couple med schools, to be very honest with you. He is a sharp, sharp guy. Plays center for us. Could have started at tackle, guard. He was our best offensive lineman, but he was the least known in that 2019 team. No one knew who he was. He didn't get to be the all-conference center because the kid at X was built up to be somebody special. And, it's unfortunate we had the best offense in the country scoring wise, and we only got one offensive lineman on the all-star team. So it was kind of one of those things like, this makes no sense. Now, we were talented in a lot of places. Anyways, I'm getting off topic here. Alex deserved to be recognized. He footwork is phenomenal. He's got great hand placement. He works his ass off at everything he plays. He can play center. He can play guard. He can play tackle. Now, he's undersized in all those positions as a CFL guy because he's only 6'2.5", but he's 275 pounds. He's worked to get to that. I think he probably carry about 285, 290, and he knows that. Technically extremely gifted, smart kid, off the field, but on the field as well. Made all of our calls at the center spot. Continues to grow. He was a mentor with us for all of our study hall stuff over the last 3 years. So we run our study hall with our academic All-Canadians. Well, he was the guy who ran the entire program. He organized it, got everybody all set up, pointed them in the right. Okay, you 3 guys are here for this night. You 4 guys are here on the next night. And so he would be the one that ran all that stuff. He's a captain. Not a big talker, not a big screamer guy, but boy, when he gets pissed off, he's something special, man. He's a tough kid. If he gets into a camp, he will surprise some people. He doesn't quit. And like I said, technically, he's outstanding.
Well, I wonder because the former center of the Hamilton Tiger Cats apparently is not being brought back, and he happened to be an AUS guy who was relatively quiet and very physical and tested pretty well. And of course, I'm talking about Mike Filer. And
Yep.
if they're not going to bring him back in these mock drafts I've been doing on CFL.ca, I've been trying to figure out is there a true center that's, a little bit shorter, smart, makes calls at the line of scrimmage, beats people up when he needs to? That sounds like a pretty good fit, honestly, to me, Jeff.
Yeah, no, you know what? He would, like I said, he's another guy that's going to come in there. He's going to surprise some people because he doesn't get beat. You know, he's physical when he needs to be physical. He's got great feet, and technically, he's always working to get better. I mean, he works with our guys the whole off season, working hand placement. They were getting up at 6:30 in the morning on Mondays and Wednesdays, getting into the gym and just working in the basketball gym. I'd be in there with my daughter, working shooting and stuff like that, and they're in there doing that stuff. So I booked it for the football guys. But it was an
Nice.
opportunity for my daughter to get some shots up, right? So I'll throw in that plug. She's going to UPEI to play basketball.
Hey,
So
there we go.
yeah, no, so we're in there, but they're working, and he's in there working with those guys at 6:30 in the morning. And it's a special group, offensive line. When I started coaching the offensive line 8 or 10 years ago, it changed the way I looked at the game of football. I had more fun doing that than any other position. And he's a guy that just I smile at every time I see him. I watch him on film. I see him in, walking through the building or around the around town, whatever. He's a special kid. He's going to go on to do great things no matter what he does. As I said, already passed his MCAT's, already been accepted into a couple med schools. And if it doesn't work out, I'm twisting his arm. Maybe he'll come
Yeah.
back and play for me. And put med school off, but he'd love to go play, and it's something that he's put everything on hold to try to get a chance to go play.
It's amazing. Last thing I want to ask you before I get you out of here, Jeff, and I thank you for all the time in this deep
It's all
discussion,
good, man.
is that I had a conversation with Kyle Mello, who I used to host on TSN radio with in the mornings here in Hamilton, and we were talking about the IIHF Women's World Championship getting shut down out there in the Maritimes, and saying, listen, can't come in, caseload is too high. My sister actually moved out with her partner and their two children to Nova Scotia. Back, it would have been about 2 months ago. My parents drove out. They did the 14-day quarantine at a cottage by themselves. They went over and saw their grandkids for a week or two. The restrictions out there, you mentioned off the top here, they've leveled up a little bit. We just saw the statement from the CFL, return to play. Here's what has to happen. We have to be able to get people into the stands. We need the vaccinations to be rolled out better and all the rest. And when I talked to Kyle about that Women's World Hockey Championship being shut down, and he said, this is the dumbest thing ever. They can't do this. There's only 25 cases there. I said, Kyle, my sister lives out there. My parents are in love with the East Coast. They just drove out there. They just drove back. And in that time, I've learned something about the maritime spirit of togetherness and understanding what you're in it with each other for. And so when you say there's more restrictions put on, people will look at the caseloads and what's happening with COVID in that part of our country, and they'll probably go, I can't believe they're doing that. But can you explain to people why it is that that part of the country has approached COVID the way that it has relative to other places? Because it is unique, it is different, but it's so extremely maritime Canadian. And honestly, political differences aside, and whatever people think about government restrictions and otherwise, the
Yeah.
spirit of what you guys have done out there is right. Like it is absolutely correct compared to other parts of the country and what has been done to approach this. And I only bring it up at the end of the conversation here because we're looking at a situation with the CFL where we're all trying to get on the field and everybody's going, well, how do we do it? And I keep looking at what you guys are doing and going, if we were all Maritime Canada, this would be a done deal and we would be locked up right now starting in July without question.
Yeah, it's you know what, and I don't want to pretend like I'm speaking for all of the Maritimes or that I can speak to all the Maritimes or for all the Maritimes, but having traveled through Newfoundland, through PEI, and through New Brunswick, and spent time there at different times throughout my 20 years here on the East Coast, um, everybody is in for the collective, the collective we. It's everybody kind of looks out for one another. It's something where the people here are some of the nicest people you're ever going to meet, and everybody kind of looks out for one another. It's not perfect by any stretch. That's what I say when I recruit kids. Hey, we're not perfect. We still have our issues with this or that, or there are things that happen here that just like a bigger city or a bigger town or metropolitan, Ontario or British Columbia or whatever. However, for the most part, everyone is pretty well worried about everyone else and concerned with everyone else and trying to look out for the greater good. And I think, we have done a great job with that. And listen, let's not kid ourselves here. We're a little bit sparsely populated compared to downtown Toronto,
Yeah.
to, the bigger metropolitan areas, Ottawa and so forth. We aren't that compact, but at the same time, everyone has stayed home. Everyone has kind of looked out for everyone else. There is a big thing with mask, and it is a big deal to make sure you're taking care of your partner, your brother. We are, the overseers of everyone else around us. And we talk about it on our team, we talk about within our universities, but it's the way the Maritimes kind of rolls. We always are looking out for everyone else. When the Maritime bubble was coming on, that was a big deal. You could travel within that bubble. Everyone kind of looked out for one another. Now, at some point, one of the provinces got a little bit, few more cases than the other, so we had to kind of switch it up and kind of block some of that, or at least put some restrictions on it. Shoot, now we're the ones that are getting restrictions here in Nova Scotia, and I mean, we had more cases today than we've had since the beginning of COVID. So,
Right.
I think with the double IHF stuff, I think they saw what was coming down the road. I think they had an idea that this might be happening, and I think it's a great decision now because they've locked down Halifax completely. And now we're down to. In fact, I just got an email saying we're a work from home university if we can now. So we're making some decisions here to try to limit where we're at. Most of the rest of the people in the rest of the country would say, oh, you had 60 cases today, like big whoop. Well, out here it is a big whoop.
Yeah.
I mean, there was 50 yesterday and 45 the day before that, and that's quite a bit. I mean, we're up above 200 cases out here in the Maritimes when a week and a half ago we were at 16 or 18 or something like that. So yeah, it is a big deal, and everybody's concerned, and I think everyone's going to kind of make the right decisions. It won't happen overnight, but I think over the next couple of weeks, by the time we get into mid-May, we'll get some shots in the arms, and I think we'll be in good shape. And I think, honestly, I mean, I think of any place in the country that's going to be able to play U Sport football, I think it'd be out here. And
Yeah.
that's not a shot at anybody else. It's just a reality of what's going on.
Yeah.
I hope that's not the case. I hope everybody in the country gets a chance to play, and I think everybody deserves to. I think our kids deserve to. They've put off so much time and been, put in a situation where mentally I think it's going to be great. And we were lucky. We had 12 indoor workouts this year or this winter, and then we had 12 full practices outside. So I hate to brag a little bit on that, but that was actually something we got a chance to do. So it was fantastic for us, and I'm hoping that everybody can kind of do the right things and do what they're supposed to over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well said as always. And I have to laugh as well because I said not too long ago to somebody, they go, "What's your plan with Canadian football perspective if the CFL doesn't get a chance to play for the second year in a row and maybe U Sports doesn't get off the ground?" And I said, "Listen, if AUS is the only thing that plays, we'll cover the shit out of the AUS." So I was like, we will be your number one source for all things
That's
Atlantic
right.
University sport football.
That's right.
You'll be so
That's
tired
right.
of talking to me, Jeff, by the time we get to October, if you guys are the only ones that are out there that are getting an opportunity to play. But it's great to catch up with you as always. I do appreciate it. And congratulations on the 20-year wedding anniversary coming up this week. That's very exciting for you. Amongst all the history of everything, your football journey that we've talked about, you've got that mixed in between as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in person when we get the opportunity. But I hope that you stay safe between now and then and enjoy yourself and get ready for another year on the field.
I appreciate it, Marshall, and I appreciate the congratulations. It means a lot, and football is great, but if you don't have a family and people here to support you and be around you, the rest of it really isn't all that important. So I'm lucky that way, and I've been lucky to have a great administration and people around here to keep me around. So hopefully we can push through another couple of years and continue to coach and play. And I look forward to seeing you too, buddy. I hope you stay healthy and you take care of yourself. And I look forward to it.